Jennings on Jeopardy. And so for me, it became this moment of what in the world is that technology? And immediately as a marketer, how can I apply it to marketing? And so I was trying to solve marketing strategy at the time. I was spending lots of time trying to figure out how do we build better marketing strategies now that there's so many channels to choose from, so many choices of where to spend your money, versus when I started the industry in 2000, when Google was a year old and iPhones didn't exist and Facebook wasn't there and Twitter, and like none of that stuff was there. Marketing strategy was easier in 2000.
True.
Fast forward to 2012, not so much. And so I just went on this discovery for years, literally for years. I didn't write about it until 2014 and speak about it until 2015, about what is AI and how can it change marketing. And so the story became, what is the current and future potential of AI?
And you mean specifically in a marketing context, or were you thinking about it more like a futurist?
Specific to marketing, because there was books written about other industries. So
Sure.
for me, it started with a book called Automate This by Christopher Steiner, and I read that in 2012. And it talked about the disruption of other industries by intelligent algorithms, going to Wall Street in the 1980s, into healthcare and transportation and e-commerce and retail and all these industries that were using intelligent algorithms. And then you look around marketing and all the money, the billions of dollars was pouring into automation companies that I always laugh, because the irony of marketing automation companies is that they're manual. So if you think about the best automation tools on the market that were getting billions of dollars in acquisition dollars or IPOs, the marketers set all the rules. All they're doing is giving you software that you as the human then have to figure out all the workflows, all the timing, everything that's going to be said. So it's just like we're given these preschool level tools that are being sold to us as automation, when in reality, they're only automating like a small piece of it. And so I looked and said, well, what happens when these are actually intelligent, when they learn, when they get better on their own? That was what we were looking at.
Right. So I guess I have a really quick question on that. So this is, we're talking about, well, 2016 is only 2 years ago, but 2012 is 6 years ago. So since the moment you had that insight, do you feel like, within like even HubSpot or something like that, and traditionally they have been like recommendation engine type things. Oh, you're writing this, your subject line's too long, or you said these were your keywords, they don't appear anywhere. I'm wondering, aside from that kind of stuff, has there been any progress made, as you see it, in marketing automation tools to actually make them more intelligent from the get-go?
Right, and I would argue none of that is intelligent.
Fair enough.
Everything you just explained is a data scientist takes a historical data set, analyzes it, and then writes rules.
Right.
And those rules don't change or get better until the data scientist changes them. So with machine learning, it starts learning 24/7 and adapting to the individual level, to that account, that client, that customer, that person. That's the main difference. And so Salesforce has sort of led the way on the sales automation side with massive acquisitions,
Yep.
And then building of Einstein, and then trying to layer that over their standard product.
Right.
But then you have companies like Oracle and HubSpot and Marketo that have been investing in machine learning, but honestly, they're just not that far yet. IBM Watson Marketing would be another. Like obviously IBM was sort of leading the way with Watson, and then trying to apply that technology over to their marketing automation stack. So there's been a lot of progress in the last, couple years, but we're extremely early in how intelligent the software can be in the marketing space.
So on the one hand, where there's a lag in terms of the tools themselves becoming more intelligent, but in terms of the things that you've written and spoken about, it also sounds like you see a lag on the marketer side, like both either marketers don't know what they could be wanting with AI, they don't know how they could be leveraging AI and even machine learning tools currently, and even beyond that, they don't even necessarily still as a cohort understand what AI and machine learning really are. So one question is, does that sound right? The other question is, where are marketers getting hung up or kind of lost and confused with regards to this stuff?
Yeah, so the way we look at it, so there was a really good study from MIT, Sloan Management Review, and Boston Consulting Group recently, and they looked at 3,100 companies, and they were looking, this is not specific to marketing, so it's just broadly,
Right.
How many of those organizations were actually piloting and scaling AI, but it also started with an understanding level. And what they found was only 18% of organizations both understand and have adopted AI and are trying to scale it. What we have found, and there's no data I've seen yet to validate this quantitatively, my best guess is that understanding of AI, like if you polled 100 marketers and said, what is AI? There's going to be fewer than 1%. Well, in that case, it would be maybe 1% that can actually give you a cohesive definition of what it is and be able to explain to you how it's used.
Right.
We are extremely early in the understanding of AI as an industry.
Right.
Most people can't explain to you what machine learning and AI are, if they're different, if they're the same. Certainly can't explain to you deep learning and neural networks. They don't get it. And that was like when we looked at the Institute in 2016, when we launched it, and we talked about that story of what we wanted to do is make it approachable and actionable. Like we're not data scientists, we're not programmers, we're not AI engineers, we're marketers.
Right.
And so we looked and said, well, if we can make it make sense to us and we can figure out what this terminology is and then go past that and say, but what does it actually mean and what does it do and what are the use cases,
Right.
then we can pull the rest of the industry along and kind of help them understand it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, though, so I'm thinking about this kind of adoption curve and stuff like that and this lack of understanding as you're talking about. And it's funny, I guess I do think of myself as fairly savvy with regards to these things. And yet, I mean, might get it right, but I'm even hesitate to float my own definition of these things. So I'm just going to go as if it's totally clear that I totally understand everything.
We had an institute around it, and it took me like a year of writing about it and speaking about it. So I was like, okay, I think I actually get it. And what it is like, you could go ask 10 experts. They don't know. Everyone is literally defining it differently.
Yep.
So once you become confident enough to say, well, I understand it in my terms,
right.
and I understand what it means big picture, then you're good.
Yeah. No, I think I'm close enough there, and partly just because I have friends who are much smarter than me that work at big universities, and they've explained it to me. But what's curious to me is we're in this. I mean, Aberdeen's becoming more and more intensively a data company, and we're focusing on intent data and things like that, and it gets into predictive and whatnot. And what was weird is that I was doing a survey of our competitors the other day, and it's amazing how many of them claim either AI or machine learning as core to what they're doing. And that's, in terms of predictive analytics or identifying intent from intent signals or using those signals to help you personalize messaging and stuff like that. I mean, I guess my question is if the people they're selling this to don't really understand what those things mean, is it just like hype or BS?
Yeah, so this is something I actually spend a lot of time thinking about and talking with companies about. I would like to believe it's honest ignorance as an industry. So what I've seen is a lot of these AI-powered companies or supposed AI-powered companies, the marketers and salespeople in charge of selling the AI tools don't know what they are, and yet they're the ones who are supposed to come up with the brand messaging.
Right.
So you have AI engineers or founders who are saying, yeah, we're using machine learning in the product and it's driving personalization and, improves conversion. And the marketer's like, okay, what is machine learning again?
Right.
Don't worry about it. Just say machine learning in it.
Right.
And so then they don't know, and then they're trying to write around it, and then the salespeople are trying to sell it, and they don't know what they're selling. And so sometimes they actually are using it, and it is software that gets smarter, and it's really intelligent stuff. Many times it's not, and maybe they're using some slight versions of machine learning within it, but the product as a whole isn't that smart. And
right.
That's what I've seen is a lot of these bigger platform companies, they may have teams of 300 engineers, and they've got 3 of them who know what machine learning is and how to use it, and when to identify machine learning problems. So the vast majority of the platform is built by people who don't know what AI is,
right.
and they continue to improve it. with predictive analytics is fine, like, but that's not necessarily AI.
Right.
So making predictions is like, machine learning boils down to making predictions based on historical data about future outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference between machine learning and straight data science is the machine learning algorithms continue to learn and get smarter and make better recommendations and better predictions. That's when the machine is getting smarter, which is really what it comes down to, is does it get smarter? It's like the simplest litmus test to someone's tech when they say, yeah, we use machine learning. Okay, how does the software get smarter on its own? Oh, yeah. Well, it makes recommendations. Yeah, but do the recommendations get better in real time based on new data? Right. No. Okay, well then let's not pretend you're actually using machine learning.
Yeah. Though this raises another question for me, and I don't know if in your research, I mean, you've been following this industry now for several years. I mean, even in real time as it's emerging. So is it just the case, though, from a performance standpoint, that your brand will do better or you can get more attention or lift or something if you like put ML or AI on your webpage or make a claim about it? Like,
they don't know.
They don't know.
They're all trying to figure it out. No. So there's some of these companies, they're assuming. Because, AI is the hot thing. Like, the CES show this year, it's like the whole thing is just an AI show.
Yep.
And Microsoft's running AI ads. Like, so if you're like a 10-person startup company and you're doing some machine learning, you're trying to figure out, like, does it matter? Like, is the market demanding machine learning? Like, is that really a talking point in our selling? Or is it the fact that the machine learning reduces churn rate and improves personalization? Like, the reality is marketers are still buying outcomes. And the way I always explain it is, if you're buying software, if you're buying marketing software for anything in your MarTech stack, what you're doing now is you're trying to find smarter marketing technology. You're trying to be able to filter through and say, okay, if I can look at 4 content intelligence platforms, which one is actually intelligent? Like, which one helps me drive efficiencies in my marketing, increase my performance? Like, but marketers don't know to demand AI within it or to ask a series of questions to find out which one is truly intelligent.
Right.
And that's where the challenge lies, is there should be demand for truly intelligent software, but the average marketer wouldn't know it if they were staring at it.
Right. Well, because they might not. It was interesting. I liked your very kind of rule of thumb definition of does it get smarter, which is interesting. I mean, we call this show the Intelligent Business Show, and we've had some conversations around what does intelligence mean. I've been very focused on it meaning data intensive, but there's other types of intelligence, of course. But I like your definition was something's intelligent if it gets smarter. If that makes sense. Like, even your organization could only truly be intelligent if you would say it gets smarter over time. Otherwise, it just might be crafty or something like that.
Yeah, and in this case, it's machine assisted. You're getting smarter based on the machines helping you get smarter versus all human brain power.
Yeah. So, wow. Okay. So I think we have talked about, or I know one of the things you look at is use cases for AI in marketing. And you just mentioned like content intelligence. I know one use case is, figuring out what should I write about. If you get into kind of natural language generation, you could even have, could machines start writing my blog for me and stuff like that? I'm just wondering if you could sketch out, like, what are some of the few, as you see, both compelling but also in the near term attainable use cases of AI for marketers?
Yeah, so we track about 1,100 AI-powered marketing and sales companies. The vast majority of those are software companies that are selling solutions. Of those, just under 500 have funding. Total about $5.2 billion in funding.
Wow.
So last year alone, they raised a little over $1 billion. I think it was 40-some companies, or 147 companies actually in 2018 raised about $1 billion.
Wow.
So we look at it a couple ways. One, we have a tool called AI Score where marketers can go through and rate 60-plus use cases on how valuable it would be to intelligently automate different tasks. So we can look at it and say, we know people value content strategy. We know they value like you were saying, like choosing topics to write about, allocation of advertising budget. Like there's just some logical things that require a lot of data and a lot of time. Those are always going to be things that are prime candidates to intelligently automate to some degree. Anything that requires data and time.
Right.
And then the other thing to look at is where is the money pouring into? So of that $5 billion, which categories of marketing are people building companies around? And so the ones that we look at that have funding, advertising is number one. So there's 141 of the 488 are advertising companies. Then you have predictive analytics, marketing automation, CRM, sales automation. So those are categorically, but social media would fit in. And then all the use cases sort of file underneath there. So with advertising, it could be developing the creative. It could be selecting which creative. It could be which channel to put the money into. It could be moving the money based on performance. But keep doing that. Like Albert would be a good example of that. You upload creative, you give it your daily budget, and then Albert, the AI system, starts allocating the budget and moving it around based on performance and mixing and matching creative.
Right. Sorry. So I'm just going to stop only because I don't think that I've ever heard of Albert. So what is Albert?
Albert's it's a publicly traded company that is like autonomous advertising.
Oh, weird.
So their software, what you do is literally you create, like you choose the images, the headline, the body copy, you upload variations of it to the system, and then you say, we want to spend $5,000 a day. And you could probably tell, like, do Facebook, Google AdWords, YouTube, and whatever. And then the AI system starts doing it, and it starts selecting the segments and, micro-targeting groups that you may have never targeted. And then it learns which creative works best together, and it learns which channel works best together. And then it'll actually reallocate your budget. And you may wake up one morning and all your money's all of a sudden going into Facebook. And the reason is because it learned that was where you were getting your best performance from.
Wow. So that's a real thing?
Yeah. They're one of the more advanced platforms. I think they might be up to like $30K a month in minimum ad spend. Wow. So when I first became aware of them, I think it was like $10K a month. Wow. But now I believe it's either 20 or 30K has to be your minimum ad spend to use the platform.
Wow. That's fascinating. So sorry to interrupt you, but I'm also thinking about the listeners. My guess is if I haven't heard of it, probably they haven't either. So
yeah, because we always look at things on levels of autonomy, and that's why you even mentioned at the beginning of the call, intelligently automated to some degree is the quote that you used.
Yep.
And I always use that disclaimer because it's like if you think about autonomous vehicles.
Right.
If you have a Tesla right now, it's not a level 5 autonomous vehicle. Like, it's not driving itself completely.
Right.
It has autopilot, but it's oversight by human. The human chooses whether or not to change the lane. That's like, we hope to get there with marketing. There may be at like level 3 or whatever it is. So I always think of autonomy within marketing as level 1 to 5. Of 1 is no AI whatsoever. It's like human-driven automation, which is what we largely have in the industry today.
Right.
Level 2 and level 3 is where the machine really starts doing more and more, and it's like human training and oversight, but pretty minimal by the time you get to level 3. That's probably the most advanced stuff that exists in the industry today is maybe level 3. And it would take someone really needing to convince me that they have level 3 technology for me to believe it. It's usually somewhere in the realm of like a 2 to a 3. There is no 5, and there won't be for quite a while, I would believe, within the industry.
Right. And I'm wondering, it's funny, along that path, one of the things I've been thinking about was, is at what point will it just be assumed that the technology you're using relies to some extent or to a great extent on machine learning and AI? I mean, like, I was trying to think about it, some kind of goofy analogy, but like if you said, oh, right now we're using computer technology to help you automate your marketing, people would be like, what are you talking about? But
the analogy I always use is road atlas.
Uh-huh.
So like, no consumer ever said, God, I just need some machine learning in my navigation system in my car. Mm-hmm. What they realized was, I used to have to figure out how to go from point A to point B by taking out a road atlas and using a highlighter and finding the way to get there, looking through the grid system and finding my destination.
Yep.
Then we had Garmins, which weren't intelligent at all, but they, it was there. And all of a sudden Google Maps came around,
right,
and Waze.
Yep.
And like, could you as a consumer ever conceive of going back to the other way?
Right.
And so I think in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to get there to where there's going to be ways to do things so much more intelligently that as a marketer, you can't fathom going back to setting up your own workflows.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to seem like, you did what? Like, we're going to have kids coming out of college and like, you used to have to like set all these workflows and visualize 200 different workflows to 40 different lists. Like, how did you even do that?
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, it does sound kind of crazy now, doesn't it?
Right. Well, no, I mean, I think too, in terms of the digital advertising thing you're talking about, it's at this stage of the game, I mean, with bidding and auctions and all these other things that are happening so quickly, a human couldn't even do it. Like, a human couldn't place the ads properly or do the betting or make these decisions. So it's, I mean, there's also a way that even the way you have to market will become less and less. Humans won't even be able to do, they wouldn't be able to function. You need an augmented system that can actually do that for you. I mean, you've written about this and, you know, in terms of what the future looks like, I mean, you wrote from audience targeting to content strategy to SEO, media buying, email writing, and predicting conversions and churn, hundreds of activities marketers perform every day will be intelligently automated to some degree in the near future. And as we were just talking about, some of these will have to be intelligently automated if you're going to do them at all. But I was just wondering what you've heard or what you think about kind of AI going the other way. And what I mean by that is we talk about AI making it easier for marketers to do things. I'm wondering if there's going to be kind of, I don't even know what you call it, consumer side or just recipient side AI that might actually make it harder for you to market to people. My most basic example would be Microsoft Outlook dividing my incoming email between focused and other, or Mimecast filtering out stuff that's just obviously marketing. Is there concern out there about this happening? Or, like, yeah, again, AI can make our lives easier, but is it also going to make marketing lives harder?
Yeah, it definitely can. I mean, you're talking about, like, email filtering was one of the original applications of machine learning. Like, is this or is this not junk or spam?
Yeah. Interesting.
It's a very basic function. And then of that filtering system getting smarter and smarter and smarter, in some cases to remove marketing message from getting to people's inboxes.
Yeah, exactly.
The ability to do ad blocking, the GDPR changes. Like, the great benefit, one of the great benefits of AI to consumers is personalization. But personalization requires data, and It requires access to private data. The bet that the industry is making is that the convenience of having personalization is greater than the risk of your privacy being invaded. And so if you think about the way Facebook approaches this, they literally will tell you, you're going to get served ads one way or the other. They can be relevant to you or they won't be. It's your choice. If you would like to limit us from having access to your personal information or the use of your personal information, then you're still going to see ads in your news feed. You're just not going to have any interest in anything we show you. And as much as we hate to admit it, Instagram is really freaking good at presenting ads to you that you want to click on. Mm-hmm. Now, I personally never click on them because I don't want to give them the satisfaction of knowing I clicked on it. Mm-hmm. But I will look at the URL or look at the company. I will go into a browser myself and then go search for that company outside of Instagram just so they know I didn't click on the ad. But it gets you to where you're like, God, it's so convenient. And I know Google knows everything about me and reads every email I write and every email that comes to me. But, man, that Smart Compose feature in Gmail is really cool now, that it finishes my sentences and always seems to write it better than I would have.
Yeah.
And so as humans, we just start getting to this point. So there is going to be this balance, though. There's going to be some things get harder for us as marketers, but if the benefit and convenience of personalization wins out, which I think the younger generation, it won't even be a debate. Like, they're so used to everything being accessible.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a far greater asset to marketers than it will be a negative asset.
Yeah, though it's interesting too, I think from a personalization standpoint, I remembered years ago interviewing this guy, Yu-Chun Lee, who founded Unica and then went on, I think his company now is called Allego, but he was also bought by IBM. And he was talking to me about personalization as like basically as a way where marketing no longer feels like marketing anymore. And whether it's oddly enough, it doesn't, sometimes it just will seem so intuitive that you won't even think of it as even personalized. Like you won't even realize it's personalized because it's just what's happening. But it sounds like that's a way that through these algorithms, right now, like if I want to put like a circular or something in a bill that I'm sending to people, I know I'm already talking like an ancient human, but that you were limited by how many different variations you could come up with. Now, as things are done electronically and with, if it can be intelligently personalized, then in a sense, it can feel like not just it's being personalized to you, but there's actually a personal interest coming from the brand about you, even though that's a decision being made by a machine and not by a human.
Well, the best marketing, best branding is always value-based. It's always how do we create value for the consumer. So, if you think about the success of Amazon or Netflix as examples, certainly they're in it to make money. Right. But at the end of the day, like the reason I shop on Amazon a lot of times, it's just easier. Yep. Like it knows what I've bought before. It may even recommend to me that I'm due to buy it again. Like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. And in that moment, it just saved me the trouble of not having that product that I would have needed in 2 days if it hadn't told me about it. Netflix, like you find the next great show. Like for me, I do the elliptical every night, and I can only do it. I get bored if I don't have something to watch.
Yep.
And so Netflix series are like the perfect thing, like 30-minute increments each night gets me to want to go back and get on the elliptical again and watch the next 30 minutes. But also the fact that Netflix just keeps surfacing things that, man, that would be an awesome show. Oh, great, there's 3 whole seasons I can binge on.
Yeah.
Like I now have the next month and a half of my elliptical workouts. And so those are the things, like I don't think about how it's, well, I think about how they do it, but right. The average human wouldn't think about right. how they're doing it. Yep. It's just better.
Yeah. No, and so on that front, since we're ending up talking about humans here, I just also wanted to read something else you had written, and we'll end up on this. So you wrote, in the process of making marketing more intelligent, AI has the potential to make brands more human by enabling marketers to focus increasing time and energy on listening, relationship building, creativity, culture, and community. AI should make us better people, professionals, and brands. But then you add, however, this won't happen without a focus on privacy, ethics, and morals. AI gives us superpowers which can be used for good or evil. So I guess my final question here is, how do we stop AI? I mean, let's leave the evil AIs taking everything over out of the question for a second. How do we stop AI from making us, not just as humans, but also as marketers, how do we stop it from making us evil?
Yeah, so the theme of, so we have the Marketing AI Conference in July, and the theme of that conference is more intelligent, more human. And that's actually where it came from. As I was building a keynote last year, and I started thinking about this, the both sides of this, and I'd created a slide that said it gives you these superpowers to be used for good or evil. Well, it was right around the time like the Cambridge Analytica stuff was happening.
Yep.
And you started looking at the evil side of what marketers can do, the way they can manipulate emotions and behaviors, and that can be used for good potentially, but in the hands of the wrong people, it can be used for evil, just like any other technology. So if you think about the internet itself, which most people who are experts in the AI space tell you AI will have a far greater impact on society and business than the internet itself. But the internet, like in the 90s, if you looked ahead and said, God, you could think of some really evil things you could do with the internet, and it could cause all these problems, but it can connect the world, and it can enable us to, communicate with friends and family and all these different things. It's going to do these wonderful things. And I feel like that's where we're at with AI. I could sit here and tell you 10 things that could go insanely wrong with the use of AI in marketing. I could tell you 50 things that could go insanely right. And it could be a net positive for the industry and for consumers. But as an industry, we have to have those conversations. Like we have to challenge each other, challenge brands, to think ethically about their use of AI.
Nice. I agree. And I think this is part of that conversation. So I thank you once again, Paul, for being on the Intelligent Business Show.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Next week, we'll be talking with Matt Wright of Wider Funnel about creating a research-driven culture at your business. Talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intelligent Business Show. You can find this show on iTunes and Spotify, as well as on YouTube. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Aberdeen_show. And if you want to know what's going on in your market space, be sure to check out Aberdeen.com.